date was April 3rd, 1977. I remember the date significantly, not only because it was my birthday, but because of the events that happened that day that I'll never forget. It was a rainy night, around 7 p.m. I had just gotten back from a friend's birthday gathering. I remember being tired. Just as I was winding down, I heard a knock at my door. It confused me because I live alone and haven't had friends over in a while. I thought maybe it was one of my friends dropping something off that I forgot at the party. So I stepped to my door and looked through the peephole, and there I saw a man. I couldn't tell if it was one of my friends, so I shouted, "Who's there?" There was no response. I shouted 2 more times. Still no response. I went back to sit on my couch, but right before I could sit, another knock hit my door. I was getting a little annoyed, so I shouted, "Ick who you are, but this isn't funny. Could you please stop?" A few seconds of silence went by. Too nervous to look through the peephole, I thought the person listened, so I finally sat on my couch and turned my TV on. After a few minutes, I finally started to calm down. But yet there was again 3 knocks at my door. That was it. I was fed up. I stormed to my door and opened it. I was shocked to see it wasn't one of my friends, but a tall, older man, staring me down. He was dressed up in a suit that looked like it had some wear and tear. I was frightened. I said in a slightly deep voice to sound more intimidating, "Who are you?" All he did was smile. Before I could kick him out and threaten to call the cops, he reached his hand out and I gave me a card. With a puzzled look on my face, I took it. The card read, "The Bohemians Club, located in the Bohemian Grove." I thought this must be a golf invitation. But before I could decline the offer, he said, "You'll have the time of your life. I'll make sure of it. We'd love to have you, Seth." A vibration of chills ran through me. How'd he know my name? I looked back up from reading the card, and he was gone. I was even more frightened than before. I dropped the card, slammed my front door, making sure I locked it, and tried to head to bed so I could get some decent sleep. But in fact, I had trouble sleeping that night, with the only thing in my mind being his wretched eyes. As I woke up the next morning to the bright sun, I got up and noticed something under my door. I couldn't quite tell what it was because my eyes were still blurry from waking up, but when I did notice, my heart sank. It was a card, with the same title on it, with the same address, the same exact one. I could still see the indent of his fingerprint on it. At that point, I was done with whatever was happening. I picked it up and walked quickly to my trash can. But right before I threw it in there, I had a thought. Why did he give me this? Why did he give me this? I questioned everything for a good minute or two, but I quickly snapped back down to earth. I can't believe I was somewhat interested in what this card was all about. I needed some answers. So I kept the card, grabbed my car keys, and headed to this so-called Bohemian Grove. I drove and drove through the night, each mile adding on to another. I could feel myself getting tired at the wheel, but I knew I had to push through, as what felt like days. I finally arrived at the gate. It looked to have been worn down and old. I couldn't believe what I was getting myself into, but I couldn't turn back now. I decided to park my car at the gate. There was no way I was driving it through there. As I locked my car, I walked closer to the gate and noticed a man with a smile, just like the one who gave me the card at my front door. He opened the gate, looked at me and shook his head, pointing me inside. At that moment, I could feel my stomach start to get heavy. So I went in, not knowing what to expect. Something didn't feel quite right within, but I neglected and headed deeper. As I continued my journey further, I became frazzled. The surroundings of endless woods with occasional cabins started to get old real quick. Every turn I felt as if someone was watching me, and indeed I was right. A group of men, dressed in matching church-like outfits, seemed to have been following my trail. Ick how I didn't notice them before. How did I not hear their footsteps crunching on the sticks? With my brain being so hazy, I tried to walk as fast as I could, but they were seeming to catch up. I didn't know what to do. But before I could make a conscious decision, they caught up to me. It was a group of 6 of them. They surrounded me. like vultures around a dead corpse. Finally, "We've been expecting you, sir," they all said with that smile I dreaded. "Let us show you around. There's plenty to see." As we started to walk, something caught my attention. There were two of them in the front, two by my side in the middle, and two in the back. In a weird, twisted way, I felt as if they were my bodyguards, like I was someone important. They showed me around the grove, they called it. Every cabin, every tree, everything felt off. I felt my urge to leave only grew. Before I could speak up and actually say a word to these men, another group of them started to walk towards us. They stopped us in our tracks. Before saying anything, the men beside me grinned at the new group, almost like they seemed to be communicating with one look. The new group took my hand and invited me to see their so-called wisdom, as they phrased it. At this point, I couldn't say no or run away. I was in the thick of it. As we went deeper into the woods, I only became more afraid. Sounds of howling and singing became more displayed. As I turned the corner of this tree, I couldn't believe what I saw. A gigantic stone owl statue covered in moss. It was almost as tall as the trees, hanging over everyone. It seemed like it was looking down at the people like its feast. I was perplexed. A different group seemed to be made up of 12, all hung around the statue, but something about this group was more disturbing. They all were dressed up in cloaks, red cloaks, bearing torches, humming and singing to themselves. Now this really freaked me out. I knew I needed to leave as quick as possible. What did I get myself into? What was going to happen? Trying to clear my mind, I looked across from the giant owl and noticed a huge pond that looked somewhat refreshing. It seemed to be the only little bit of peace I could feel since being there. On the other side of the pond were some stone bleachers that looked to be built into the ground, as if they'd been there for quite a bit. Hundreds of people filled them, not a space in between a single person. After dissociating for about the fourth time, a duo of the cloaked people grabbed me on each side, snapping me back to reality. After that, a small boat appeared out of a bush that was located right near the water on the opposite side of the lake. In the boat was two more men, but they seemed to have been in the church, like clothes that I saw before. Once the boat got to the side I was on, the cloaked duo pushed me in there. I looked back to say something, but once I did, I couldn't see their faces, just glowing eyes. Like an animal in night. I felt as if the boat was an unnecessary way to travel to the other side, but there was no way I was going back in those woods. I felt safer being out in the open. Once I got to the side of the bleachers, the two men made sure I got out of the boat with ease. I asked, "What now?" With a puzzled look, they both pointed behind me. What I saw next made my bones cold. One specific bleacher seat that had my name engraved in it. But the oddest thing about it was that it obviously wasn't new. I could see the moss growing all around it. It had cracks in it like old stone would, with my heart pounding out of my chest. I'm afraid my only choice was to sit in it. Once I did, I felt somewhat powerful. I had the perfect view of everything. The giant owl, the people surrounding it, the view was perfect. As I sat there, I began to think back on why I was there. None of my questions have been answered. Only more question bloomed. I kept on getting distracted by every little thing. It's almost as if they were doing this on purpose. My mind was so warped it was upsetting me. I could feel anger start to build up. What the hell was I doing here? Why did I come all the way out here and not get a single answer? Those questions kept repeating in my head. As I started to get more anxious and frustrated, I began to ask myself the more important questions. What was going to happen to me? Can I escape? Is it too late to turn back? I started to freak out in my seat, but I couldn't get up and cause a scene. This time I was done. I needed to get out of there. I got up from the cold stone and started to scan the forest for the quickest way out. I was on the edge of running. I planted my shoes deeper into the ground to propel myself so I could get a slight boost before running for my life. I was going to run. I felt my head begin to sweat. I was going to run. I cracked every bone I possibly could in that moment. I was going to run in 3, 2, 1. Bang! It echoed the forest. I was stunned. I looked to see where that sound came from. I noticed there was a giant gong right beside the owl. One of the cloaked men rung it. Another man stepped forward, but there was something different about him. He was dressed up in a cloak like the others, but it was black. As he took the hood off, I had a realization of what I was seeing. It was him, the guy that gave me the card at my apartment door. I couldn't believe it. He shouted, "Bring fire," with the rest of the cloaked men repeating after him. Then he stated, "Welcome everyone. We're so excited to get tonight underway. But before we do, I shall introduce to you lovely people a very special person that's here in the audience tonight. My friend Seth." He smiled and pointed right at me. There it was, that smile. That smile I could barely get sleep over. That smile that brought me here. That smile that was turning my life upside down. For the first time that entire day, I felt at ease. Something about seeing him again brought a strange comfort over me, almost like the feeling of seeing an old friend you haven't seen in a while. As we locked eyes, that smile I dreaded so much grew onto me. I began my face to form that very same smile. An assortment of things happened throughout the night. The smile man chanted many labels, with the coordination of the audience responding after every little thing he said. The cloaked men danced and sung all around the giant owl, with every moment getting more intense, almost like the owl was feeding their energy. But then there was one last moment of the night that I'll never forget. At the very end night, the smile man stepped up to the podium and called my name. He announced, "Now what you've all been waiting for, Seth. We are waiting for you." They brought the same boat to pick me up from the side they dropped me off at. With every inch that the boat got closer to the smile man, the ride felt slower than normal. Once I got to the other side, the same duo that dumped me and picked me back up, they brought me to the smile man. Only for the second time, him and I were face to face. I felt an urge of anxious take over my body, not knowing what was coming next. He reached his right hand out that was holding an old-looking dagger that was rusted. He looked at me and stated, "We've been waiting for you for the longest time. Your time has come. This is it. Make us proud." A shock went over my head. He made me step up to the shrine they had placed in front of the owl. What I found next was truly disturbing. There was an infant inside. I was trembling with fear. I was questioning everything. Was I about to harm this child? What was I about to do? I had no recollection of the past, what felt like 2 hours, and all of a sudden, I'm standing in front of this baby about to stab this. What is going to happen? But then there it was. That feeling took over me. The feeling I felt when my face formed the same smile as the man I knew so unfortunately well. I stopped shaking. I smiled. As I raised the dagger, the whole force began to count out loud. 3, 2, 1. I woke up in a panic. I couldn't see where I was. I started to flip out and rub my eyes as hard as I could. My vision was coming back slowly. I never felt more nervous in my life. Was what just happened real? Was I going to wake up with everyone looking down at me? I tightened my eyes and closed them hard as I could. Then they finally opened. I was in my room. I could see the sun shining through the blinds. I checked my alarm clock. 9:38 a.m. it read. I sprang up from my bed. I looked around to see everything in place like it was the night before. I got up and ran to my living room. To my shock, everything was exactly the same. Nothing had changed. Did I seriously just dream everything? Was all of that a big nightmare? I checked my shoes to see if there was any mud from the forest on them. Nothing, not a single piece. I checked my keys. They were in the same place I had them. Not a single trace of evidence depicted I ever went to the grove. I was shell-shocked. I grabbed a glass of water, sat at my dining room table that faced the entire living room, and sat there the whole morning trying to get my thoughts together. Everything was so clear in my mind. I remember getting to the gate, walking around those endless redwoods, getting caught by those men, seeing the owl and its audience, seeing those rituals and ceremonies, holding that dagger while looking at the little fetus I was about to murder. But just like that, none of it happened. I found it hard to believe. There was no way in hell that none of that wasn't real. But I was dealt with no answers, only the flashbacks of painful, uncertain memories. I may never know if any of what I experienced ever truly happened that night, so I tried my best to continue my day. A couple years later, as I was packing up my place to move, I picked up my old coat to put it in a box to donate. As I moved it, something fell out of it. It was a folded piece of paper. This was weird because I never put things in my coat pockets, but maybe I could have for one brief moment. I wasn't exactly sure. But anyway, I picked the piece of paper up. It was folded 3 times. As I fully unfolded it, I froze in time. It was a photograph of the men I saw that night, standing around the giant owl, looking at the camera with no emotion behind their faces. The most disturbing realization hit me. The man in the middle of all of them was indeed the man with the smile. I dropped the paper. I felt the same chill hit my body that hit me all those years later when he approached my door and gave me the invitation that would later haunt me for the rest of my life. Fast forward a couple months later, I kept the piece of paper. I still have it to this day. It sits on my nightstand next to my lamp. I don't touch it, but I sometimes look at it and think what really happened that night. One thing that I do know is now I have to sleep with a light on every